They banned me from the family reunion like I was a stain they needed to scrub out. From my rental car, I watch my mother lead the pack up the driveway of the beach house she thinks is a lucky rental. She enters the code I set myself. They haul in coolers and confidence, oblivious that the deed has my LLC on it. I will let them settle in for 20 minutes before I remind them who really holds the keys. My name is Skyla Morales, and right now I am invisible. I am sitting in the driver's seat of a rented silver sedan with tinted windows, parked just far enough away to be mistaken for a neighbor's guest, but close enough to see the sweat glistening on my mother's forehead. The engine is off. The air conditioning died 5 minutes ago, and the Georgia heat is already starting to press against the glass like a heavy, wet blanket. It is 90 degrees in Seabrook Cove today, with humidity that makes the air feel thick enough to drink. I do not mind the heat. The heat keeps me focused. It reminds me that I am real. Even if the people currently invading my property believe I have ceased to exist, through the windshield, I watch the caravan arrive. It is a spectacle of entitlement. 3 large SUVs pull into the driveway of the pristine, 3-story beach house that sits proudly against the backdrop of the Atlantic Ocean. The house is a beauty. If I do say so myself, I spent 6 months renovating it, choosing every slat of the siding and every tile in the master bath. It stands tall, painted a soft, dusty blue that mimics the twilight sky, with white trim that gleams under the midday sun. It looks expensive. It looks exclusive. It looks like exactly the kind of place my family feels they deserve, despite never having worked hard enough to earn it. My mother, Linda, is the first to exit the lead vehicle. She steps onto the crushed shell driveway wearing a wide-brimmed straw hat and a flowing floral caftan that screams vacation matriarch. She claps her hands, shouting directions at my father and my brother, Kyle, who are dragging coolers out of the trunk. Even from here, with my windows rolled up, I can imagine her voice. It is a frequency that cuts through glass. She points at the stairs leading up to the main deck, her fingers stabbing the air. She is directing traffic in a driveway she does not own, for a house she did not rent. I watch her lips move. I know exactly what she is saying. She is telling them to be careful. She is telling them not to scratch the paint. She is acting like the guardian of the estate, the benevolent queen who has bestowed this luxury upon her subjects. My phone vibrates in the cup holder. The screen lights up, displaying a notification from a messaging group titled Family Reunion 2026. I am not a participant in this group anymore. Not really. I was removed as an active member weeks ago, but thanks to a glitch in the app, or perhaps the sheer incompetence of the admin, my sister, Bridget, I can still see the preview of the broadcast messages on my lock screen. The message is from Bridget. It reads, "Final reminder to everyone. Skyla is not to be given the address. She is not invited. If anyone shares the location with her, you are ruining the vibe for Mom. Let us keep this drama-free." I stare at the words. They are sharp, concise, and cruel. A few years ago, reading that would have sent me spiraling into a panic attack. I would have called my father, begging to know what I did wrong. I would have texted Bridget, apologizing for sins I had not committed just to be allowed back into the circle. I would have driven down here with a store-bought cake and a desperate need for validation, hoping they would let me sleep on the couch. But today, I feel nothing. No, that is not accurate. I feel a cold, precise satisfaction. It is the feeling of a trap springing shut exactly when you intended it to. I look back at the house. Bridget has stepped out of the second car. She is holding her phone up, already recording a video for her social media. She spins in a circle, capturing the ocean view, the swaying dune grass, and the impressive facade of the house. She is framing the narrative. Look at us. Look at our success. She poses near the front stairs, flashing a smile that does not quite reach her eyes, selling a lifestyle that is entirely fraudulent. They approach the front door. This is the moment. This is the test. The front door is equipped with a high-end smart lock. It requires a 6-digit code. My family walks up to it with zero hesitation. They do not fumble for keys. They do not call a host. Linda steps up to the keypad, her posture radiating confidence. She punches in the numbers 1, 9, 8, 5, 0, 7. It is my birthday, July 5th, 1992. The irony is thick enough to choke on. They are using the date of my birth to enter a house they have explicitly banned me from. They likely assume the code was set by the rental agency or perhaps by whatever contact Linda claims to have used to secure this place. They do not know that I set that code remotely 3 hours ago. I set it specifically because I knew it was the one number my mother would never forget. Not because she cares about me, but because it was the day her body was ruined by childbirth, a fact she has reminded me of at every birthday dinner for 3 decades. The lock mechanism whirs. The small light on the keypad turns green. A distinct, cheerful chime echoes from the porch. The door opens. I watch them freeze for a split second, as if they cannot believe it actually worked, and then a cheer goes up. Kyle high-fives my father. Bridget squeals, clapping her hands together before rushing inside. Linda turns back to the driveway, hands on her hips, looking at the rest of the relatives pouring out of the third car. She waves them in, benevolent and grand. See, I told you I had it handled. They stream into the foyer. I can see the movement through the large bay windows on the first floor. They are reacting to the interior now. I know what they are seeing. They are seeing the hand-scraped oak floors I imported. They are seeing the massive, abstract oil painting in the entryway that I commissioned from a local artist in Savannah. They are seeing the chef's kitchen with the dual industrial ranges and the marble island that seats 12. They are screaming with delight. I can see Bridget jumping up and down in the living room. She rushes to the window, looking out at the ocean, and for a second, she looks right at my car, but she does not see me. She sees only her own reflection in the glass, superimposed over the sea. She sees only what she wants to see, her own grandeur. I sink lower in my seat. This is the part where a normal person might intervene. A normal person. One who has not spent a lifetime being gaslit and marginalized by their own blood. Might get out of the car. They might march up the stairs, wave the deed in the air, and scream at them to get out. They might demand an apology. They might try to shame them. But I know my family. Shame is a foreign language to them. If I went in there now, Linda would twist the narrative instantly. She would say I was stalking them. She would say I was trying to ruin their vacation. She would claim they had a reservation and I was the one confused. They would gaslight me until I was the one apologizing for owning my own home. No, I cannot stop them yet. I need them to settle. I need them to unpack. I need them to open the wine. I need them to feel ownership. I need them to commit the crime fully. Right now, they could claim it was a mistake. They could say they got the wrong address. They could say the door was unlocked, but once they start eating the food, using the showers, and sleeping in the beds, they are no longer lost tourists. They are squatters. They are intruders. I watch as the lights flicker on in the upstairs bedrooms. They are claiming their territories. I know Linda is taking the master suite on the top floor, the one with the private balcony and the soaking tub that overlooks the dunes. She will love that tub. She will probably strip down and get in it within the hour, thinking she has won the lottery. Bridget will take the second best room, the one with the queen bed and the vanity lighting I installed specifically for makeup application. Kyle will take the bunk room on the main floor because it is closest to the 75-inch television and the oversized leather sectional. They are spreading out like a virus. I roll down my window just a crack. The sound of the ocean is drowned out by the noise coming from the house. They have opened the sliding glass doors to the deck. Music is already blaring some generic pop hit that Bridget loves. I hear the clinking of glass bottles. Someone is dragging a heavy cooler across the hardwood floor. Linda's voice drifts out, shrill and commanding. Be careful with that cooler. Do not scratch the floor. This place is worth millions. I almost smile. She is right. It is worth $2.4 million, to be exact, and she is terrified of damaging it. Not because she respects property, but because she wants to pretend she belongs in it. She wants to play the role of the wealthy matriarch who provides nothing but the best for her brood. A seagull lands on the hood of my rental car, staring at me with bead-like eyes. I stare back. We are both scavengers today, waiting for the right moment to strike. I pick up my phone again. The group chat is silent now. They are too busy celebrating to text. They are too busy popping champagne corks and fighting over who gets the password to the Wi-Fi. Speaking of Wi-Fi, I check my security app. I have cameras installed in the main living areas and the exterior. I tap the screen, bringing up the feed from the living room. The image is crisp, high definition. There they are. My father is sinking into the white linen sofa, a beer already in his hand. He looks tired, but relieved. He thinks he has a week of free luxury ahead of him. He thinks he has avoided the conflict of having me there. He thinks peace has been purchased at the price of my exclusion. Bridget is in the kitchen, opening cabinets. She pulls out a crystal wine glass. My crystal wine glass, and holds it up to the light. She laughs, saying something to her fiancé, Dylan, who is leaning against the marble counter looking impressed. They look like a commercial for the perfect American family. Successful, happy, united, they have erased me completely. In their minds, I am hundreds of miles away, sitting in my small apartment, crying over my lack of invitation. They think they have won. I close the camera app. My heart is beating a steady, slow rhythm against my ribs. It is a calmness I have had to learn. Years of therapy and years of working in cybersecurity have taught me one thing: emotion is a vulnerability. Patience is a weapon. I look at the digital clock on the dashboard. It is 3:14 in the afternoon. They have been inside for 12 minutes. I need to give them a little more time. I need them to get comfortable. I need them to break a seal on a bottle of wine. I need them to use the bathroom. I need the forensic evidence of their presence to be undeniable. I reach for the folder on the passenger seat. Inside is the deed to the house, the formation documents for Seaglass Harbor Holdings, LLC, and a printed copy of the text message banning me from the reunion. It is my arsenal. I take a deep breath, inhaling the scent of stale rental car upholstery and salty air. I am not Skyla the daughter today. I am not Skyla the sister. I am Skyla the landlord, and rent is due. I look at the house one last time. Linda has walked out onto the main deck, holding a glass of wine. She leans against the railing, looking out at the ocean, looking like she owns the entire Atlantic seaboard. She takes a sip, closing her eyes in pure bliss. Enjoy it, Mom, I whisper to the empty car. Soak it in. I pick up my phone and dial a number I have saved as Tidemark Management. Emergency line. It rings once, twice. A woman answers, her voice professional and crisp. Tidemark Property Care. This is Sarah. How can I help you? I clear my throat, ensuring my voice is steady. There is no tremor. There is no hesitation. Hello, Sarah. This is Skyla Morales. I am the owner of the property at 42 Dune Grass Lane. There is a pause, the sound of typing on a keyboard. Yes, Ms. Morales. We have your file right here. We were not expecting you until tomorrow for the inspection. Is everything all right? No, I say. My eyes fixed on my mother's silhouette on the balcony. Everything is not all right. I am currently outside the property. I have reason to believe there are unauthorized individuals inside my home. They have bypassed the security code and are currently occupying the premises. The tone on the other end changes instantly. It goes from polite to alert. Oh my goodness. Are you safe? Do you want us to call the police immediately? I watch Linda laugh at something my father says. She looks so happy. She looks so secure. Not yet, I say. I check the time again. 3:16. I want to follow protocol. I continue. I want to make sure there is no misunderstanding. I'm going to give them a few more minutes to realize their mistake, though I doubt they will. But Sarah. Yes, Ms. Morales. I want you to send your on-call property manager over. And I want you to have the local sheriff's department on standby. But tell the manager to drive slowly. Why is that, she asks. Confused? Because, I say, watching Bridget take a selfie with my expensive throw pillows. It is time. But I want to let them stay in there for exactly 20 more minutes. I want them to get really, really comfortable. I hang up the phone and place it gently back in the cup holder. 20 minutes. That is enough time for them to finish one drink. That is enough time for them to unpack their swimsuits. That is enough time for them to believe, with 100% certainty, that they have gotten away with it. I lean back in the seat and cross my arms. The heat is stifling, but I do not roll down the window. I just sit and watch the house that banned me, waiting for the eviction notice to arrive, to understand why I'm sitting in a hot car watching my family break into my home. You have to understand who Skyla Morales is supposed to be. To the world, and specifically to the people currently dragging sand across my hardwood floors. I am a non-entity. I am 34 years old. I work in cybersecurity for a firm called Arbor Vale Tech Solutions. When people ask what I do, I tell them I work in data compliance. It is a boring phrase designed to make people's eyes glaze over, and it works every single time. It stops the questions. It prevents anyone from digging deeper. If I told them I hunt down vulnerabilities in banking infrastructures or patch zero-day exploits that could cripple a hospital network, they might think I'm interesting. They might think I am powerful. And in the Morales family, there is only room for one kind of power, and I am not the one who is allowed to hold it. I have spent my entire life perfecting the art of being beige. I am the background noise. I am the static between the radio stations. This was not a genetic accident. It was a survival strategy I developed before I was 10 years old. Our family operates on a very specific, rigid operating system. My mother, Linda, is the sun, the gravity, and the heat death of the universe all wrapped into one. She dictates the emotional weather of the household. If she is happy, we are allowed to breathe. If she is unhappy, it is our job to fix it, usually by sacrificing our own comfort or dignity. My father, Mark, is the master of avoidance. He's a good man in the theoretical sense, meaning he never raises his hand and he goes to work every day, but he is a coward in the practical sense. He learned long ago that the path of least resistance was to agree with Linda, even when she was wrong, even when she was cruel. He looks at the floor a lot. He finds sudden, urgent interest in the television whenever the volume of my mother's voice rises above a conversational level. He taught me that peace is not the absence of war, but the absence of noise, and he would sell me out in a heartbeat to buy himself an hour of silence. Then there is Bridget, my older sister, the star, the golden goose who never actually lays any eggs. Bridget was born to be looked at. She consumes attention the way a fire consumes oxygen. Growing up, if Bridget had a recital, the world stopped. If Bridget had a breakup, the house went into mourning. She is loud, chaotic, and charming in that superficial way that works on strangers but exhausts anyone who actually knows her. And finally, Kyle, the baby, the boy. In a traditional structure like ours, the son can do no wrong. Kyle is 31 now, but to my mother, he is still a toddler who needs his shoes tied. He floats through life on a raft of excuses constructed by my parents. If he loses a job, it is the boss's fault. If he gets a speeding ticket, it is the cop's fault. He has never faced a consequence he couldn't charm or whine his way out of. And then there is me, Skyla. My role was simple. I was the insulation. I was the shock absorber. I learned early on that I was not the smart one, or the pretty one, or the special one. I was the reliable one. That sounds like a compliment. But in a toxic family dynamic, it is a curse. It means you are the one who remembers the birthdays. You are the one who drives the relatives to the airport at 4 a.m. because Bridget needs her beauty sleep and Kyle lost his license. You are the one who lends money that never gets paid back. I learned that if I did something well, I was not praised. I was simply given more work. If I got straight A's, it was expected. If I cleaned the kitchen, nobody noticed until I stopped doing it. The lesson was carved into my spine by the time I was 12. Do not ask for things. Do not cause trouble. Do not expect anyone to defend you. The annual family reunion was always the high holy day of this dysfunction. It was my mother's stage. She would parade us around in front of the extended aunts and uncles, curating a perfect tableau of American success. Bridget would shine. telling exaggerated stories about her career in marketing, which was mostly just posting on social media. Kyle would be the rugged, misunderstood genius, and I would be the punchline. It became a tradition. Over boxed wine and potato salad, they would turn the spotlight on me, but only to examine my flaws. "Skyla is still single," Mom would say with a theatrical sigh, shaking her head as if I had a terminal illness. "We tell her she needs to put herself out there, but she is just so focused on her little computer job." Or Bridget would chime in, laughing while she poked me in the ribs. "Skyla is just too picky. She wants a prince, but she acts like a librarian." They would laugh. I would smile. I would swallow the humiliation like a stone, letting it sit heavy in my gut. Because I knew that if I fought back, if I snapped, I would be the villain. I would be the one ruining the trip. I would be the difficult one. So I learned to dissolve. I learned to let their words pass through me like I was made of smoke. But every year, I found one escape: the ocean. There is a reason I love the coast. It has nothing to do with tanning or drinking margaritas. I love the ocean because it is indifferent. The Atlantic does not care if my mother thinks my hair is too flat. The tide does not care if Bridget thinks my shoes are out of style. The ocean is massive, violent, and loud, and standing next to it was the only time I felt like I was allowed to be exactly who I was. Small, insignificant, free. That was where the dream started. I wanted a piece of that indifference. I wanted a wall between me and them that they could not scream over. So, I started building. I did not build with bricks or wood. Not at first. I built with silence. I got my degree without asking for a dime. I worked 3 jobs. I ate instant noodles and lived in an apartment the size of a closet, so I would never have to ask my father for rent money. When I got hired at Arborvale, I started making real money, serious money, the kind of money that changes lives. But I knew the rules. In my family, resources are communal, but debts are personal. If they knew I had money, it would not be my money. It would be the family's money. If Linda knew I got a bonus, she would decide the house needed a new roof. If Bridget knew I had 6 figures in my savings account, she would suddenly have a business idea that just needed a little startup capital, a loan she would never repay because family helps family. If Kyle knew I was solvent, he would guilt me into buying him a truck. So, I became a hoarder of secrets. I drove a 10-year-old sedan with a dent in the bumper. I wore clothes from discount racks. I never talked about promotions. I never posted about vacations. When the company went public and my stock options vested, netting me a payout that made my knees weak, I went to work the next day with a bagged lunch and told my mother I was worried about layoffs. I lied to them every single day. And every lie bought me another brick of freedom. The decision to buy the beach house in Seabrook Cove was the culmination of 10 years of deception. I found it 2 years ago. It was a wreck then. A battered old structure that had taken a beating from a hurricane and been left to rot. But it sat on a stretch of sand that felt isolated, quiet. I bought it under an LLC, Seaglass Harbor Holdings. I hired a lawyer to handle the paperwork so my name would never appear on a public registry. I paid for the renovations in cash. Wire transfers sent from accounts my family could not imagine existed. I spent my weekends driving down here, telling my family I was working overtime or taking certification courses. I stripped wallpaper. I sanded floors until my hands were blistered. I chose every fixture, every paint color. I built a sanctuary designed for one person, me. I never intended to tell them. That was the point. This house was the one thing in the world that was mine. It was the only place where I was not Linda's disappointment or Bridget's shadow. It was the only place where I was the main character. I had fantasies. Of course, sometimes, late at night, sitting on the deck with a glass of wine, listening to the waves crash, I would imagine inviting them. I would imagine a version of my family that was normal. I imagined my mother walking in and saying, "Skyla, you did good." I imagined my father looking at me with respect instead of apology. I imagined us sitting around the table, laughing, not at me, but with me. But fantasies are dangerous. They make you soft. The reality hit me a month ago when the planning for this reunion started. I saw the way they talked about me in the group chat before I was kicked out. I saw the casual cruelty. I realized then that no amount of success would ever change the dynamic. To them, I was not a person to be respected. I was a resource to be exploited or a nuisance to be managed. When I found out they had rented a house in Seabrook Cove, I felt a flicker of anxiety. When I realized they had somehow found my house, my sanctuary, and believed it was a rental, that anxiety turned into something cold and hard. They did not know it was mine. They just saw a beautiful house and assumed it was available for them to take, just like they assumed my time, my energy, and my self-esteem were available for them to take. I could have stopped it weeks ago. I could have had the property manager cancel the booking. I could have told them the house was under maintenance. But then the message came, the ban. You are not fit for the reunion. You bring down the mood. That was the spark. That was the moment the bridge burned. I sat in my office at Arbor Vale, staring at that text message, and I realized that simply keeping my secret was no longer enough. Passive resistance was no longer enough. They wanted to erase me. Fine, I would let them. I would let them walk right into the trap of their own arrogance. I did not buy this house to hurt them. I bought it to save myself. But as I sit here now, watching the shadows lengthen across the driveway, I realize that sometimes saving yourself requires burning down the structures that hold you captive. My family believes that money is the ultimate power. They think that because they have arrived with their coolers and their loud voices, they own the space they occupy. They think that because I am quiet, I am weak. They think that because I am absent, I am defeated. They are about to learn the most expensive lesson of their lives. I checked my bank account this morning. The balance is a number they would not know how to read without stuttering. But the true wealth isn't the number. It is the deed in the folder next to me. It is the knowledge that I built this life while they were busy trying to tear me down. They are inside my house now, walking on my floors, breathing my air. They are celebrating their exclusion of me in the very shrine I built to escape them. It is almost poetic. I am not Skyla the doormat anymore. I am Skyla the owner. And in 20 minutes, I am going to introduce them to the landlord. The ocean is loud today, but the silence I am about to bring down on them will be deafening. I look at my hands resting on the steering wheel. They are steady. No shaking, no fear, just the calm, patient waiting of a predator that knows the prey has already walked into the cage. I have spent 34 years learning how to be invisible. Today, I am going to show them what happens when the invisible girl decides to be seen. The digital execution happened exactly 30 days before the cars pulled into the driveway at Seabrook Cove. It did not happen with a scream or a fight. It happened with a polite, scheduled video conference call on a Tuesday evening. My phone had buzzed at 7 o'clock sharp. It was a calendar invitation titled Family Sync regarding reunion logistics. I remember staring at the notification while I was heating up leftover Thai food in my kitchen. A cold knot had tightened in my stomach, the kind of visceral warning system that only activates when you know you're about to walk into an ambush. Usually, these planning sessions were chaotic flurries of text messages or group emails. A video call meant formalities. A video call meant a tribunal. I accepted the invite and opened my laptop. The screen flickered to life, revealing the familiar grid of faces that constituted my biological origin story. Top left was my mother, Linda. She was sitting in her sunroom, the lighting perfectly arranged to soften the lines around her eyes. She was wearing a crisp white blouse, the kind she usually reserved for church or bank appointments. That was the first bad sign. She looked official. She looked like she was about to deliver a press release. Top right was my sister, Bridget. She was holding a glass of rosé, looking bored, checking her reflection in the camera feed. Next to her, barely visible in the frame, was Kyle, who looked like he had just woken up from a nap. And bottom left was my father, Mark. He was sitting at the dining room table, separate from my mother. He was polishing his glasses with the hem of his shirt. He did not look at the camera. He was looking intently at a smudge on the lens, scrubbing at it with a ferocity that betrayed his nervousness. He knew what was coming. He had probably been briefed, rehearsed, and silenced hours ago. "Hello, everyone," I said. My voice sounded thin in the quiet of my apartment. "Hi, sweetie," Linda said. Her voice was warm, dripping with that sickeningly sweet syrup she used to coat her poison. "We just wanted to hop on a quick call to finalize some details for the trip next month. We have made some executive decisions." I set my fork down. I did not eat. I knew better than to have an appetite when Linda was in executive mode. "Okay," I said. "What is the plan?" Linda sighed. A long, tragic exhalation that suggested she was carrying the weight of the world. "Well, we have been talking. Your father and I, and Bridget, we have been discussing the vibe of this year's reunion. You know how important this is to me. It has been a hard year for everyone." I waited. Silence is the best counter to manipulation. "We want this trip to be about relaxation," Linda continued, her eyes locking onto mine through the pixelated screen. "We want total decompression, no stress, no work talk, no tension." I nodded slowly. "That sounds great." "Mom, right," she said, "and we have to be honest with each other. Skyla, lately, you seem overwhelmed. You are always so high-strung. Even when you are with us, you are checking your emails. You are taking calls. It creates a certain energy, a heavy energy. It makes people feel like they are walking on eggshells because they do not want to disturb your important business." I felt the blood rise to my cheeks. It was a lie. I had not taken a work call during a family event in 3 years. The last time I had checked an email at dinner was because Kyle had asked me to look up a mechanic for his car. "I am not stressed," I said, keeping my voice level. "I actually have plenty of vacation time saved up. I was planning to leave my laptop at home." Linda smiled. A sad, pitying smile. "See? That is exactly it. You are already defensive. You are already debating. This is what we mean. Skyla, you have this intensity that it does not fit with the flow we are trying to create." Then Bridget chimed in. She took a sip of her wine and swirled the glass. "Look, Sky, it is not a big deal. Mom just thinks we all think that maybe you would be happier skipping this one. You know, you clearly hate hanging out with us anyway. You always sit in the corner and judge everyone. It is a buzzkill." I stared at my sister. Judge everyone. I sat in the corner because nobody spoke to me unless they needed tech support or a loan. "This isn't about my attitude, is it?" I asked. The words left my mouth before I could stop them. The air in the virtual room shifted. My father stopped polishing his glasses and put them on, staring down at his hands. "This is about the loan," I said, 2 weeks prior. Bridget had come to me with a brilliant business proposal. She wanted to start a curated lifestyle brand essentially selling repackaged candles and tote bags. She needed $50,000 for inventory and website design. She had asked me to co-sign a business loan because her credit score was in the ruins. I had said no. I had said it politely. I had said, "Bridget, I love you, but I do not mix family and finance." I had offered to help her build the website myself for free. I had offered to help her write a business plan, but I had refused to put my name on a $50,000 debt for a company that existed only in her imagination. Linda's face hardened. The mask of concern slipped, revealing the steel beneath. "This is not about money, Skyla," Linda snapped. "It is about support. It is about loyalty. When your sister needs you, you turn your back. You act superior. You hoard your success like it makes you better than us. That attitude, that is what we do not want at the beach house." So that was it. The verdict was in. I had refused to pay the toll, so I was barred from the bridge. "We think it is best for your mental health," Linda said. Pivoting back to the script, "We want you to take that week for yourself. Stay in the city. Work on your projects. We will send you pictures." Bridget laughed. "Yeah, it is honestly better this way. Less drama. Better for everyone. Right." "Dad?" I looked at Mark's square on the screen. "Dad?" I asked. He looked up for a split second. His eyes met mine, and I saw the apology there. I saw the fear. He knew this was wrong. He knew it was punishment. But he also knew that if he sided with me, He would be the one sleeping on the couch for the next 6 months. He would be the one listening to Linda's lectures about betrayal. He looked back down at the table. Your mother just wants everyone to have a good time. Skyla, he mumbled. Maybe next year. The betrayal was not sharp. It was dull and heavy, like a wet sandbag dropped on my chest. Fine, I said. I did not argue. I did not beg. If you do not want me there, I will not come. Good, Linda said, clapping her hands together once, briskly. I am glad we could handle this like adults. Now, for the rest of us. I am sending the final itinerary in the group chat. We managed to secure that property I told you about, the one right on the water in Seabrook. I saw Bridget's eyes light up. The big one, with the double deck. Yes, Linda beamed. The owner finally approved the booking. It was a hassle, but I pulled some strings. It is going to be spectacular. She looked at the camera one last time. Okay, meeting adjourned. Skyla, take care of yourself. We will miss you. The screen went black. The call ended. 10 seconds later, my phone buzzed on the counter. I picked it up. It was a notification from the messaging app. You have been removed from the group Reunion 2026 planning. They had wasted no time. I was out, exiled, deleted, but in their haste to cut me off, they had made a mistake. A split second before the removal notification appeared, a final message from Linda had come through to the group. It was a link to a digital brochure, accompanied by the text, "Here's the place." Everyone saved the address. The preview of the link was still visible in my notification history. 42 Dunegrass Lane, Seabrook Cove, Georgia. I froze. I stared at the tiny text on my lock screen. I knew that address. I knew it because I had typed it into insurance forms. I had typed it into tax documents. I had typed it into the GPS of my car 100 times during those long weekend drives to check on the contractors. It was my house. My breath caught in my throat. I sat down on the kitchen stool, my mind racing. How was this possible? I had listed the house for rent briefly, 6 months ago, on a high-end vacation rental site just to test the market value. I had wanted to see what the projected income could be for tax purposes. But I had set the price exorbitantly high, $3,000 a night, and I had blocked out all the dates. Or at least, I thought I had blocked out all the dates. I opened my laptop again, my fingers flying across the keyboard. I logged into the rental platform I had used for the test. There it was, a confirmed booking. I clicked on the details. The booking had been made 4 months ago. The name on the reservation was not Linda Morales. It was Dylan Harper Bridget's fiancé. I scrolled down. The dates matched the reunion week perfectly. I sat back, trying to piece it together. Bridget must have seen the listing. She must have been browsing for luxury rentals in the area, seen my house, which looked completely different from the dump it used to be, and fallen in love with it. She had no idea it was mine. The listing was under Tidemark Management, the property management company I used to handle the logistics, so my name stayed off the front end. They had booked my house. They were paying, or rather, Dylan was paying an absolute fortune to stay in the home of the sister they had just banned. A bubble of laughter rose in my throat. It was a hysterical, jagged sound. My phone buzzed again. It was a direct message from my Aunt Marcia. She was not in the immediate family chat, but news traveled fast in the Morales network. "Hey, honey," Marcia wrote. "I just heard you are too busy for the reunion this year. That is a shame. Your mom is saying something about a new beach house. Did the family buy a place? She is acting like she owns it." I stared at the message. Linda was already spinning the narrative. She was telling people it was the family's place, not a rental. She was implying ownership. That was typical Linda. If she paid for a week, she acted like she bought the deed. She probably told the extended family that they had invested in a vacation home to explain why it was so much nicer than their usual rentals. I typed back slowly. "Oh, really? I guess they are moving up in the world. I do not know," Marcia replied. She sent a picture of the exterior. "It looks fancy. Hope you are okay." "Sweetie, I am fine. Aunt Marcia." I typed, "I am going to be just fine." I closed the chat window. I needed to be absolutely certain. I needed to see the paper trail. I navigated to the county property records website. I did this every month just to check that my taxes were recorded correctly. But this time I typed in the address with a shaking hand. 42 Dunegrass Lane. Search. The results populated in less than a second. Owner of Record Seaglass Harbor Holdings, LLC. Mailing address, P.O. Box 774, Atlanta, Georgia. I opened a second tab and logged into the Secretary of State's business portal. I searched for Seaglass Harbor Holdings, LLC. Registered Agent Ethan Rowe, Escal. Manager Skyla Morales. The screen glowed white in my dimly lit kitchen. There it was, the undeniable truth. My family was not just going to a beach house. They were walking into a legal bear trap that I had constructed with my own sweat and equity. I looked at the date on the calendar. The reunion was 1 month away. I could cancel the booking. I could call the management company right now and tell them to void the reservation. I could tell them I had decided to use the house myself. Dylan would get his deposit back. They would have to scramble to find a new place. It would be a minor inconvenience for them, but then I remembered Linda's voice. You bring a heavy energy. I remembered Bridget's laugh. Better you don't come. I remembered my father polishing his glasses, refusing to look me in the eye. They wanted me to disappear. They wanted to enjoy the fruits of success without having to look at the person they considered a failure. They wanted the luxury without the loyalty. If I canceled the booking, I was just the difficult sister again. But if I let them go, if I let them drive down there, unpack their bags, and claim the house as their own, if I let them believe, even for a moment, that they were the masters of that domain, then I would not just be crashing the party. I would be the landlord serving an eviction notice to tenants who had violated the lease of basic human decency. I closed the laptop. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. I did not reply to Linda. I did not text Bridget to argue. I did not call my father to beg. I went into my bedroom and pulled out my suitcase. I did not pack it then, but I set it by the door. I had 30 days to prepare. I had 30 days to make sure that when they walked through that door, they were walking into a courtroom, not a vacation. I picked up my phone and sent one final text, not to my family, but to the property manager at Tidemark. Hi, Sarah. Regarding the booking for July, please ensure the owner's closet is double locked. And please send me the full guest list provided by the renter. I want to review it for security purposes. The reply came 2 minutes later. Will do. Ms. Morales. I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I had felt in weeks. Let them go. I whispered to the empty room. Let them think they own the place, because nothing hurts quite as much as having something ripped away from you the moment you think it is yours. And I was going to let them hold it. I was going to let them hold it tight. Coincidence is a fairy tale for people who do not understand data. In my line of work, we do not believe in luck. We believe in patterns. We believe in vectors of attack. And when I sat in my apartment, staring at the property records that linked my secret sanctuary to the very people who had just exiled me, I knew this was not a random spin of the cosmic wheel. The mathematical probability of my sister, Bridget, randomly stumbling upon the one house in Georgia owned by her estranged sister, out of the thousands of listings on the eastern seaboard, was statistically zero. They knew, or at least, they suspected enough to dig. I did not scream. I did not throw my laptop across the room. Instead, I went into what I call containment mode. When a server is breached, you do not panic. You isolate the infected nodes. You trace the source of the intrusion, and you prepare the countermeasures. I started with a forensic audit of my own life. How did they find Seaglass Harbor Holdings? The LLC was watertight. My name was not on the public deed. The registered agent was my lawyer. The mailing address was a P.O. box in a city 3 hours away. I logged into my credit monitoring service. I had set up alerts years ago, but like most people, I had become desensitized to the monthly emails telling me everything was fine. I clicked on the tab for recent inquiries, and there it was, the fingerprint of the thief. 6 weeks ago, a hard credit inquiry had been run by a major credit card issuer. That was followed. 3 days later, by the opening of a high-limit travel rewards card. I clicked on the account details. The name on the account was Skyla Morales. That was standard. But the mailing address for the card was not my apartment in the city. It was not my P.O. box. It was 1244 Oakwood Drive. My parents' house. My blood ran cold. But my pulse did not speed up. It slowed down. This was the clarity I needed. This was the smoking gun. Someone likely my mother. Given her access to my old mail and Social Security documents from when I was a minor, had opened a credit line in my name. They were intercepting the statements at their house. It made perfect sense. They saw the credit limit. They saw the purchasing power. And in the process of sifting through my financial exhaust, they must have seen the initial capitalization transfer to the LLC, or perhaps a piece of mail from the Secretary of State had slipped through to their address before I changed it. They had not just booked a vacation rental, they were tracking my assets. They knew I had this house, or at least that I was connected to it. That explained Linda's smug comment about the family beach house. In her warped mind, if her daughter's name was on the money that bought it, then the property belonged to the collective. They were not renting it. They were commandeering it. They believed they were entitled to it because they believed they owned me. I closed the browser tab. The investigation was complete. The verdict was guilty. Now came the sentencing phase. I reached for my phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. Ethan Rowe was not just a lawyer. He was a shark in a three-piece suit who specialized in asset protection and estate litigation. He was expensive, aggressive, and he terrified my father the one time they met. He answered on the second ring. Skyla, to what do I owe the pleasure? I need you to open a new file. Ethan, I said, I am going to send you a series of documents, a credit report showing identity theft, a deed to the Seabrook property, and a digital copy of a rental agreement made by a third party for that same property. I heard the sound of a pen clicking on the other end. I am listening. My family has booked my house for their reunion, I said, keeping my voice flat. The reunion they explicitly banned me from attending. They are using a credit card opened fraudulently in my name to pay for at least part of the trip expenses, or at the very least, they are using the existence of that card to justify their entitlement to my assets. There was a moment of silence. Then Ethan let out a low whistle. That is bold, stupid, but bold. Do you want me to file a police report for the identity theft today? We can have them arrested before they pack their sunscreen. I considered it. I imagined the police knocking on my parents' door right now. It would be efficient. It would be just, no. I said, not yet. Why? Ethan asked. Because if I stop them now, they will play the victim. I explained. They will say it was a misunderstanding. They will say they were just borrowing my credit to improve my score. They will say they didn't know the house was mine. They will gaslight the entire extended family into thinking I am the crazy, vindictive daughter who calls the cops on her own mother over a clerical error. I took a deep breath. I need them to walk into the trap. Ethan, I need them to enter the house. I need them to damage the property. I need them to break locks. I need the trespass to be physical and undeniable. I need a mountain of evidence so high that no amount of crying from my mother can scale it. Understood, Ethan said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. He liked a good siege. What do you need from me? Draft a notice of trespass, I said. Have it ready to serve, and prepare a civil suit for credit fraud. But do not file anything until I give the signal. I want the paperwork to be the nail in the coffin, not the warning shot. Consider it done, he said. Anything else? Yes, I said. If they call you because once the hammer drops, they will try to find out who represents the LLC. You do not know me. You represent the company. You have never heard of a Skyla Morales. Done. I hung up. Step 1 was complete. The legal perimeter was set. Step 2 was the physical perimeter. I called Tidemark Property Care. This was a delicate conversation. I needed them to do their job, but I also needed them to stand back and let the violation happen. I spoke to the senior manager. I did not give him the emotional sob story. I gave him the liability story. I am updating the authorized access list for the property at 42 Dune Grass Lane. I told him, effective immediately. The only individuals authorized to be on the premises are myself, my attorney Ethan Rowe, and your staff. But Ms. Morales, the manager stammered, we have a confirmed booking for next week. The Harper party. I know. I said, do not cancel it. He paused. I am confused. If they are not on the authorized list, but they have a booking, let them check in. I said, process their code. Let them enter. But I wanted on record that I, the owner, have not personally authorized their presence as guests. To you, they are renters. To me, they are trespassers. It is a legal distinction I am making for a pending litigation. Just ensure the security system is fully active. And one more thing, I added, the owner's closet, the one in the hallway. Yes, I want a secondary deadlock installed on it tomorrow, and I want you to place a very clear, very large sign on it that says authorized personnel only, private property. We can do that, he said, though he sounded uneasy. Good, and I want 2 additional cameras installed, one pointing directly at that closet door, and one wide-angle lens covering the main living area. I want them hidden, but legal. I want to capture audio and video. I will have the technicians out there on Thursday, he said. I hung up. The stage was being set. I spent the rest of the night gathering paperwork. My family hated paperwork. To them, contracts were suggestions and deadlines were for other people. They operated on handshake deals and emotional leverage. They were about to learn that the real world runs on documentation. I printed out the deed to the house, the papers that proved I was the sole member of the LLC. I printed the tax returns showing I had paid every cent of property tax for 2 years. I printed the insurance policy. I printed the text messages where Bridget told me I was banned. I printed the email where Linda claimed the family had secured a house. I organized them into a crisp, black binder. This binder was not just paper. It was my shield. It was the difference between my daughter is being mean and the plaintiff is exercising her legal rights. I stared at the binder. I debated. For a brief second, sending them a warning. A simple text. I know about the card. I know about the house. Don't do it. It would be the kind thing to do. It would save them from public humiliation. It would save my father from the heart attack of seeing the police at the door. But then I looked at the credit report again. I looked at the inquiry date. They had stolen my identity 6 weeks ago. They had planned this while I was still helping Bridget with her resume. They had smiled in my face while they were robbing me. Kindness was what got me here. Kindness was the currency they had devalued until it was worthless. I picked up a pen and wrote a sticky note, placing it on the cover of the binder. House rules, don't steal what you can't afford. I packed the binder into my bag. I was not going to warn them. Warning them would give them time to come up with a lie. Warning them would give them a chance to destroy the evidence. I needed them to feel safe. I needed them to feel arrogant. I needed them to walk into that beach house with their chests puffed out, believing they had successfully cut me out of the picture, because the higher they climbed on their pedestal of self-righteousness, the harder they would fall when I kicked the legs out from under it. I checked the weather for Seabrook Cove. It was going to be hot, 90 degrees and sunny, perfect beach weather, perfect weather for a storm. I went to bed that night and slept soundly for the first time in a month. The anxiety was gone, replaced by the cold, heavy certainty of a plan in motion. They wanted a reunion, I would give them one. I would reunite them with the consequences of their own actions. People often mistake the accumulation of wealth for a sudden, loud explosion, like a firework going off in a night sky. They think you win the lottery, or inherit a trust fund, and suddenly you are driving a Bentley. But for me, and for many people in my industry, wealth was a slow, quiet accretion, like silt building up at the bottom of a river until it becomes an island. I did not steal this money, and I did not stumble upon it. I bled for it in the glow of 3 computer monitors while the rest of the world was sleeping. Before I was at Arborvale, I was employee number 7 at a boutique security firm in Austin. I was 26 years old, and for 4 years, I did not have a social life. I did not have hobbies. I had caffeine and code. I worked 80-hour weeks hunting for backdoors and encryption protocols. When that company was acquired by a tech giant, My equity, those little pieces of paper that my mother told me were worthless, compared to a steady government job vested. The wire transfer that hit my account was not just a number, it was 7 figures of validation. It was enough to buy a house, a car, and a closet full of designer clothes. But I did not buy any of that. I paid off my student loans, I maxed out my retirement accounts, and then I looked for a place where I could bury the rest of it, somewhere it would grow without anyone watching. That was when I found Seabrook Cove. I had driven through this town years ago, right after a particularly brutal Thanksgiving where Bridget had announced her first engagement, and my mother had spent 3 hours critiquing my career choices. I had fled the house, driven 4 hours south, and ended up sitting on a rusted public bench overlooking the dunes. I remember eating a cold turkey sandwich from a gas station, feeling the wind whip my hair across my face. It was the first time in years I did not feel the need to explain myself. The ocean was loud, chaotic, and completely uninterested in my existence. It did not care if I was married. It did not care if I was promoted. It just was. I promised myself then that if I ever had the means, I would buy a piece of that silence. When the money came, I bought 42 Dunegrass Lane. I did not walk into a real estate office and slap down a check. That is what amateurs do. That is what people who want attention do. I treated the purchase like a covert operation. I hired a lawyer in a different county to form Seaglass Harbor Holdings. We used a registered agent service so my home address would never appear on a subpoena or a tax bill. We used an escrow account that shielded the source of the funds. When the deal closed, there was no celebratory post on social media. There was no photo of me holding a set of keys with a caption like "homeowner vibes." In the age of oversharing, privacy is the ultimate luxury. It is the only thing money can buy that actually feels like freedom. I spent the next 18 months renovating the place, and this was where the secrecy became a discipline. It would have been so easy to brag. It would have been so easy to show Bridget that her little apartment could fit inside my living room, but I swallowed that pride. I designed the house to be the antithesis of my childhood home. My parents' house is cluttered with stuff. It is filled with knickknacks, dusty porcelain figurines, and furniture that is too big for the room, all screaming for attention. It is a house designed to impress guests, not to comfort the people living in it. I went the other way. I wanted minimalism. I wanted breath. I installed floor-to-ceiling windows that let the light flood in, unblocked by heavy drapes. I chose white oak floors that felt warm under bare feet. The kitchen was my masterpiece. I did not want a show kitchen. I wanted a working kitchen. I put in a 6-burner range because I actually like to cook when no one is hovering over my shoulder telling me I am chopping the onions wrong. I bought a single, massive slab of quartz for the island, smooth and cool to the touch. I remember standing in the empty living room after the contractors had left, the smell of fresh paint and sawdust hanging in the air. It was silent. There was no television blaring. There was no one asking me to move my car. There was no one critiquing my outfit. For a brief, naive moment, I thought about telling them. I stood there, looking at the guest bedrooms, and I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe if I invite them here, to a place that is undeniably mine, they will finally respect me. Maybe we can have a Christmas here where Mom doesn't stress about the turkey and Dad doesn't hide in the garage. Maybe I can give them this gift. But then reality set in. I played the scenario out in my head, and I saw exactly how it would go. If I told my mother, Linda, she would not see this house as my achievement. She would see it as a family resource that had been unfairly withheld from her. She would walk in the door and immediately start redecorating. She would say things like, "Oh, this white is too sterile. We need to add some color." Or, "Why did you buy this sofa? It stains too easily." Within a week, she would be referring to it as our beach house. She would start offering it to her friends from church. "Oh, you are going to the coast. You should stay at our place. I will give you the code." She would turn my sanctuary into a currency she could trade for social standing in her circle. And if I ever said no, if I ever said, "Mom, I actually want to be alone this weekend," I would be the selfish daughter. I would be the ungrateful child hoarding her wealth. and the money itself that would be the real poison. If Linda knew I had the liquidity to buy a $2 million home, every financial dynamic in our family would shift. Suddenly, me paying for dinner wouldn't be a nice gesture. It would be an expectation. If the air conditioner broke at their house, it would be my job to fix it. I would become the family bank. And unlike a real bank, I would not be allowed to charge interest or deny a loan. Then there was Bridget. If Bridget knew about this house, it would cease to be a home and become a content studio. She would see the lighting, the ocean view, the aesthetic, and she would move in. She would stage photo shoots in my kitchen. She would invite her influencer friends over for collabs. She would tag the location in every post, destroying the anonymity I had worked so hard to build. Bridget does not understand boundaries because she views the world as an audience. To her, this house would just be a bigger, better stage. She would resent me for owning it, but she would feel entitled to use it because, in her mind, she is the main character who deserves the best sets. And my father? Mark. I love my dad. In a complicated, pitying way, but telling him would be the same as publishing it in the local newspaper. He is not malicious, but he is weak. He cannot keep a secret from Linda. If I told him, "Do not tell Mom. I bought a house," the pressure would eat him alive. He would let it slip during a commercial break within 48 hours. Or worse, he would tell his golfing buddies, bragging about his successful daughter, and word would get back to Linda through the grapevine. He would create a security leak not out of malice, but out of incompetence. So, I made a choice, a hard choice. I decided that some things are too precious to share. I decided that this house was not just an asset, it was a boundary. In a family where boundaries are treated like insults, keeping a secret is an act of rebellion. I furnished the house with things I loved, not things that would impress them. I bought books they would never read and put them on the shelves. I bought expensive wines that I drank alone on the deck, watching the sun dip below the horizon. It wasn't about being stingy. I donate to charity. I tip waitresses 50%. I am not a miser. But with my family, generosity is a trap. If you give a mouse a cookie, he asks for a glass of milk. If you give my family a weekend at a beach house, they ask for the deed. I remember one specific afternoon, about 6 months after the renovation was done. I was sitting on the floor of the living room, assembling a coffee table. My phone rang. It was my mother, complaining that her dishwasher had broken and implying that I should chip in for a new one because I didn't have any real expenses living in my small apartment. I looked around my $2.4 million home. I looked at the imported Italian tiles. I looked at the view of the Atlantic Ocean churning outside my window. I have expenses, Mom, I said into the phone, my voice steady. Oh, please, she scoffed. You pay rent on a shoebox. You don't know what it's like to maintain a real household. I didn't correct her. I didn't snap. I didn't say, actually, I just paid a $12,000 property tax bill this morning. I just said, I know. Mom, it must be hard. I hung up the phone and felt a rush of adrenaline. It was a strange, intoxicating power. They thought they knew the shape of my life. They thought they had measured the perimeter of my existence and found it small. They were wrong. I realized then that the secret was the most valuable thing in the house. The furniture could be replaced. The walls could be repainted. But the knowledge that I had something they couldn't touch that was priceless. That is why I didn't stop them when they booked it. If I had intervened, if I had said, "Hey, that's my house. Don't go there," I would have had to reveal the secret. I would have had to surrender the one advantage I had by letting them go, by letting them break in. I was preserving the integrity of my ownership. I was letting them prove, once and for all, that they did not respect boundaries. I am not hiding this house because I am ashamed. I am hiding it because I am protecting it. A fence does not need to be made of wood or iron to be effective. Sometimes, the strongest fence is simply silence, and right now, as they open my refrigerator and drink my wine, they are about to find out what happens when you climb over a fence you didn't even know was there. I paid for this house with money, but I kept it with discipline, and frankly, the discipline cost me a lot more than the cash ever did. But looking at the security feed, seeing Bridget put her feet up on the coffee table I assembled with my own hands, I know it was worth every penny. They are guests in a reality they do not understand, and I am the architect they forgot to fear. The audacity of my family operates according to a physics that defies the laws of nature. In the real world, when you expel someone from a community, you forfeit the right to access their resources. If you fire an employee, you do not ask them to chip in for the office Christmas party. If you break up with someone, you do not ask them to pay your rent. But in the Morales ecosystem, the normal rules of social exchange do not apply. They believe they can sever the limb, but still demand the blood supply. The messages started arriving 3 days before they packed their bags. I was sitting at my desk at Arbor Vale, auditing a firewall log for a client, when my phone vibrated. It was a text from my mother. Linda. The message read, "I know you are not attending the reunion, but since we are renting such a large, expensive house to accommodate everyone, and since you are saving money on airfare and time off, it is only fair that you contribute your share of the lodging costs. We are asking for $500 per working adult. Please Venmo me by Friday so I can settle the accounts." I stared at the screen, blinking slowly. They had banned me. They had told me my presence was toxic. They had stolen my identity to open a credit card to book the travel. And now, they wanted me to wire them $500 in cash to subsidize the vacation I was explicitly forbidden from enjoying. It was a masterclass in financial abuse. Linda framed it as fairness. In her mind, the family was a collective entity, a corporation. I was a shareholder who had been stripped of voting rights, but was still expected to pay dues. I did not reply immediately. I took a screenshot. I saved it to the folder labeled Evidence. An hour later, my phone rang. It was Bridget. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but I needed to gauge their temperature. I needed to know how desperate they were. I answered on the third ring. "Hello, Bridget." "Hey, Sky," she said. Her voice was pitched high, breathless, the tone she used when she wanted something. "I am just calling to follow up on Mom's text. She is really stressed about the deposit for the rental. It would really help the vibe if you just sent the money." The vibe. That word again. "I am not coming." "Bridget," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Why would I pay for a house I'm not sleeping in?" Bridget sighed, a sharp exhalation of impatience. "Look, do not be difficult. Think of it as a peace offering. You know Mom is upset with you. If you send the money, it shows you still care. It is a way to make amends." I spun my chair around to look out the window at the parking lot. "Make amends?" I asked. "For what, exactly?" There was a silence on the line. It stretched for 5 seconds. Bridget was scrambling. She could not say, "For refusing to give me a loan without sounding greedy." She could not say, "For being successful without sounding jealous." "You know for what?" she stammered finally. "For just being you. For the way you act. Just pay the $500. Skyla, consider it an investment in not being the villain for once." "I am not paying." I said. Bridget made a noise of disgust. "You are so selfish. This is exactly why nobody wants you there." She hung up. I set the phone down. My hand was shaking, not from fear, but from a cold, simmering rage. They wanted me to pay a fine for my own existence. They wanted me to rent the right to be their daughter, even in absentia. That evening, the requests got pettier. Kyle texted me at 9 o'clock at night. "Hey, does the beach house have HBO? I want to watch that new dragon show. If not, can you text me your login and your Netflix password too?" Mine expired. I looked at the message. Kyle, a 31-year-old man, could not afford $15 a month for a streaming service, yet he was about to spend a week in a $2.4 million home. The irony was that the house did have HBO. It was logged in on the 75-inch television in the main living room. It was logged into my account. When he turned on the TV, he would see my profile name right there on the screen. I did not reply to him. I let him sweat. Let him arrive and find out. The next day, The narrative warfare began. My cousin, Sarah, who has always been the family gossip but occasionally serves as a useful double agent, sent me a series of screenshots from a group chat I was not part of. It was a conversation between Linda and her sisters, my aunts. Aunt Beatrice had asked, "Is Skyla really not coming?" "That is sad," Linda had replied. "We tried. We really did. But Skyla is going through something right now. She is very unstable. She demanded we change the dates to fit her schedule. And when we could not, she blew up at us. We decided it is safer for everyone if she stays home and gets some help." I read the words unstable and get some help. My mother was painting me as mentally ill. She was using the language of concern to assassinate my character. By framing me as unstable, she immunized herself against any accusations I might make later. If I claimed the house was mine, she could just say, "See, I told you she was having delusions." I typed a reply to Sarah. "Thanks for showing me this. Don't say anything to them." Sarah replied, "I won't, but this is messed up. Sky, they are making you sound crazy." "I am not crazy," I whispered to myself. "I am methodical." I saved the screenshots to the folder. Every lie they told was another brick in the wall I was building around them. Then came the slip-up, the clue that changed everything. It was Thursday, 2 days before their arrival. My Aunt Marcia called me. Marcia is Linda's younger sister, flighty and generally harmless, but she has a mouth that runs faster than her brain. I answered, expecting another lecture about family unity. "Hi, Aunt Marcia?" "Hi. Honey," she chirped. "I'm just packing my swimsuit. I am so excited I just wanted to call and say I am sorry you won't be there. It won't be the same without you." "Thank you, Marcia," I said. "I am just so impressed with your mom," she continued, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Finding a place like this, and getting it for free. She really is a miracle worker." I froze. "For free?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. "What do you mean, free?" "Oh, you know," Marcia said. "She told us she called in a favor. Apparently, the house belongs to a friend of a friend, or maybe a distant cousin. I wasn't clear on the details. But she said we are borrowing it. That is why we have to be so careful with the furniture." It is a loner. I felt a chill run down my spine. Borrowing it. Linda knew, or at least, she knew enough. My mother did not have rich friends. She did not have connections who owned multi-million-dollar beachfront estates. If she was telling people she was borrowing the house, it meant she had seen the name on the deed or the LLC. She might not know for a fact it was me. She might have seen Seaglass Harbor Holdings on a piece of mail at my apartment years ago. Or maybe she saw the address in my GPS history once when she borrowed my car. But somewhere, deep in her lizard brain, she had connected the dots. She suspected the house was linked to me. But instead of asking me, instead of congratulating me, she had decided to test the theory by invading. If she booked it and I didn't stop her, she would confirm her suspicion. If she booked it and got away with it, she would establish a precedent of ownership. She was squatting on my property to see if I would blink. She was calling my bluff. I realized then that this was not just a vacation for them, it was a power play. Linda was trying to seize the asset by usage. If she could stay there for a week without me kicking her out, she would mentally file the house under family property. I needed to make them feel safe. I needed to lull them into a false sense of security so deep they would never see the axe coming. I opened the messaging app on my phone. I composed a message to Linda. "Mom," I wrote, "I'm sorry I cannot contribute the $500 right now. Money is tight, but I hope you all have a wonderful time. The house looks beautiful in the pictures. Enjoy the beach for me." I hit send. It was a soft trap. By pleading poverty. Money is tight. I fed her ego. I confirmed her belief that I was a failure who couldn't even afford a small contribution, and by wishing them well, I signaled surrender. 2 minutes later, Linda replied with a thumbs-up emoji. She took the bait. She thought I was beaten. She thought I was sitting in my apartment, broke and submissive, accepting my punishment. That was the green light. I spent the next 24 hours in a state of calm preparation. I packed my bag. I double-checked the binder. I called Ethan, my lawyer. to confirm he was on standby. Then, on the morning of their arrival, just hours before I parked my rental car to watch them enter, I got a call from the Tidemark property manager, Ms. Morales. "It is Sarah at Tidemark." "Yes, Sarah. What is it?" "We just had a strange call on the main line." She said, "A woman called. She identified herself as Linda Morales. She said she was the owner of the property at 42 Dune Grass Lane." I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. "She said what? She claimed she was the owner," Sarah repeated. "She said she had forgotten the master code for the door and wanted us to reset it to a new number. She wanted the code to be 1234. I laughed. It was a dry, humorless bark. Of course she did. Linda didn't just want to enter the house. She wanted to control access. She wanted to change the code so she could be the gatekeeper. She wanted to be the one who gave the code to the rest of the family, solidifying her role as the matriarch of the manor. "What did you tell her?" I asked. I told her that for security reasons, we could not reset the code over the phone without verification of the account's security question. Sarah said, "She got very angry. She started yelling about how she pays our fees. Eventually, she hung up." "Good," I said. "Ms. Morales," Sarah said, her voice hesitant. "This is escalating. Are you sure you want to let them in? If they are impersonating the owner, let them in," I commanded. "Do not change the code. Do not block their access." "But why?" Sarah asked. "Because," I said, watching the first of their SUVs turn onto the highway exit ramp in the distance. "Impersonating an owner to gain access to a property is fraud. It is another charge on the list. If she had just entered as a guest, it would be trespassing. But by calling you and claiming to be me, by claiming ownership, she just upgraded her crime." I paused. "Let them believe they have won. Sarah, let them believe the code works because they are entitled to it. When they punch in that number and the door opens, they will think the universe has bent to their will. I want them to feel that high, because the fall from that height is going to be fatal." I hung up the phone. I sat in my car, watching the heat waves rise off the asphalt. They wanted the keys to my kingdom. They wanted the passwords to my life. They wanted the credit for my hard work. They were about to get exactly what they asked for. They were going to get the full experience of being Skyla Morales, the scrutiny, the judgment, and the consequences of every single mistake. I checked my watch. They were 10 minutes away. "Come on in." "Mom," I whispered, "the door is unlocked. But you are never going to leave this vacation the same way you arrived." I arrived in Seabrook Cove exactly 24 hours before the invasion was scheduled to begin. I did not drive my own car. I rented a nondescript silver sedan at the airport, the kind of vehicle that blends into asphalt, and parked it 2 blocks away before walking to the house. The house was silent, standing tall against the dunes like a sentry waiting for relief. The air inside was stale, trapped sunlight and recycled cool air, preserving the stillness I had curated. I did not turn on the lights. I moved through the rooms with the efficiency of a crime scene cleaner, but instead of scrubbing away evidence, I was planting it. This was not a vacation home anymore. It was a stage, and I was the set designer. My first stop was the technical infrastructure. I opened my laptop on the kitchen island and connected to the local network. I ran a diagnostic on every sensor in the house, the motion detectors in the foyer, the glass break sensors on the sliding doors, and the external perimeter alarms were all green. I checked the camera angles. The new cameras Tidemark had installed were discreet, tucked into the corners of the ceiling molding like tiny, unblinking eyes. I pulled up the live feed on my phone. The resolution was 4,000 pixels. I could see the dust motes dancing in the air. I tested the audio pickup. I whispered the word trespass from the living room, and it came through crystal clear on the recording playback. Next, I focused on the illusion. If my family walked in and saw my personal shampoo in the shower, or my favorite brand of coffee in the pantry, the game would be over too soon. They would know. I needed them to believe, unequivocally, that this was a sterile, corporate rental property. I needed them to feel detached enough to mistreat it. I went through the house and sanitized it of Skyla Morales. I took my few personal photos off the bookshelf in the study and locked them in my briefcase. I replaced the high-end, refillable glass soap dispensers with generic plastic ones I had bought at a drugstore. Then, I planted the props on the kitchen counter. I placed a laminated sheet of paper with the Tidemark Property Care logo at the top. It was a generic, welcome guests letter that I had asked the management company to print for me. It listed the Wi-Fi password, which I had changed to a random string of characters that was annoying to type, and the checkout rules. Next to it, I placed a guest book. It was a cheap, leather-bound volume I had picked up at a gift shop. I opened it to the first few pages and forged a handful of entries in different handwriting styles. Thank you for a wonderful stay. The view is amazing. The Johnsons, Ohio, best vacation ever. We will be back. Mike and Sarah. These little lies were the mortar that would hold their delusion together. When Linda walked in, she would see that guest book and feel safe. She would see the Tidemark logo and think she was dealing with a faceless corporation, not her daughter. And because she thought she was dealing with a corporation, she would feel entitled to bend the rules. The trap was almost set. Now, I needed the bait. I walked to the end of the hallway on the main floor. There was a solid oak door there, the owner's closet. Inside were my personal linens, my good wine, my tools, and the files regarding the house renovation. I installed a fresh battery in the smart lock on the door. Then, I took a label maker and printed a strip of red text, authorized personnel only, private property, do not enter. I stuck it right above the handle at eye level. I knew my sister. I knew Bridget better than she knew herself. If I had left the door unmarked, she might have ignored it. But by labeling it authorized personnel only, I had turned it into a challenge. To Bridget, a locked door was an insult. It was a secret being kept from her. She would obsess over it. She would wonder what was behind it. Was it expensive liquor? Was it extra bedding? Was it something she could use? I gave the handle a firm tug. It didn't budge. Perfect. My phone buzzed. It was an encrypted email from Ethan Rowe, my attorney. The subject line was Operation Eviction, ready for execution. I opened the attachment. It was a masterpiece of legal aggression. The document was a formal notice of trespass, drafted under Georgia state law. It cited the specific statutes regarding criminal trespass and unauthorized habitation. Ethan had included a second document, a script for interacting with law enforcement. Skyla. The email read, I have spoken to the Sheriff's Department in Seabrook. I did not give them names yet, but I informed them that a property owner under my representation anticipates a hostile squatting situation this weekend. They are aware. If you call, ask for Deputy Miller. He is the one I spoke with. Do not engage in an argument with your family. Do not scream. Hand the officer the deed, the rental agreement from the third party showing the fraud, and this notice. Let the badge do the talking. I saved the documents to my phone and printed 2 hard copies, sliding them into my black binder. Just as I was closing the email, a notification popped up from a social media monitoring tool I use for work. I had set it to track mentions of Seabrook and vacation from Bridget's accounts. She had just posted a story on Instagram. It was a photo of a pile of luggage by her front door. The caption read, Heading to our family estate in Seabrook. So excited to host Dylan's parents for the first time in a proper setting. Blessed beach life meeting the in-laws. I stopped breathing for a second. Dylan's parents, the Harpers. I knew Dylan. He was a decent enough guy. A bit passive. Swept up in Bridget's tornado. I had met his parents once, briefly. They were old money, serious people. They valued propriety and reputation above all else. This changed the calculus. Linda and Bridget weren't just using the house for a vacation. They were using it as a stage set for a con. They were bringing the Harpers here to prove that the Morales family was on the same social stratum. They were going to pass off my $2.4 million home as the family estate to impress the future in-laws. They were building a marriage on a foundation of fraud. If I exposed them in front of just the family, it would be a humiliation. But if I exposed them in front of the Harpers, it would be a nuclear event. It would shatter the image Bridget had spent years curating. It would reveal them not just as cheap, but as liars. I felt a flicker of hesitation. Was this too much? Was this cruel? Then I remembered the credit card. I remembered the text banning me. I remembered the years of being the punchline. They chose the venue. I said aloud to the empty room, I am just providing the lighting. I finished my sweep of the house. I checked the windows one last time. I adjusted the thermostat to 72 degrees comfortable, welcoming. I walked out the front door and locked it behind me. I punched in the code 1985007 to make sure it was active. The lock chirped cheerfully. I walked down the crushed shell driveway to where I had parked my rental car. I drove it around the block and parked it in a public lot that had a direct line of sight to the house, but was obscured by a thicket of oleander bushes. I reclined the seat. I checked my supplies: a bottle of water, a protein bar, my laptop, my binder, and a pair of binoculars. I was not Skyla the daughter anymore. I was the hunter in the blind. The sun began to dip lower in the sky, painting the clouds in bruises of purple and orange. I watched the road. I waited. And then I saw them. The caravan appeared, the 3 SUVs, shining and confident, turned onto Dune Grass Lane. They slowed down as they approached number 42. I saw the brake lights flare red. I saw my mother in the passenger seat of the lead car, pointing at the house, her face animated with triumph. I could see her mouth moving, claiming credit for the architecture, for the view, for the very air they were breathing. I saw Bridget in the second car, phone already out, filming her arrival for her audience. They looked so happy. They looked so sure of themselves. They had no idea that the house they were looking at was not a sanctuary, but a courtroom. I picked up my phone and opened the Tidemark app. I watched the status of the front door lock. Locked. I saw Linda get out of the car. I saw her walk up the stairs. I saw her punch in the code. The status on my phone changed. Unlocked. Access granted. User code. Linda. I didn't stop them. I didn't honk my horn. Go ahead, I whispered, watching them flood into the foyer, dragging their coolers and their lies across my threshold. Make yourselves at home. Break something. Steal something. Lie to the in-laws. Do it all, because in 20 minutes, I'm going to walk through that door, and I'm going to burn the script you wrote. The stage was set. The actors were in place. The audience, the Harpers, was arriving. I sat back and waited for the show to begin. The live feed from the living room camera buffered for a fraction of a second before snapping into crisp, high-definition clarity. The audio kicked in a moment later, and suddenly, my car was filled with the sounds of the invasion. My mother, Linda, was the first one across the threshold. She did not stop to admire the architecture. She did not pause to appreciate the way the afternoon light hit the ocean beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. She walked into the center of the room, dropped her heavy tote bag onto my white linen sofa, and put her hands on her hips. It is smaller than it looked in the pictures, she announced. Her voice was not disappointed. It was critical. It was the voice of a woman looking for a flaw so she could be the one to fix it. She walked over to the mid-century modern armchair I had imported from Denmark, a piece of furniture that cost more than my first car. She frowned at it. Why would they put this here? She asked the air. It blocks the flow. Kyle, come help me move this. I watched, gripping the steering wheel of my rental car, as my brother lumbered into the frame. He was wearing muddy sneakers. He did not take them off. He grabbed the arm of the chair. Mom, do we have to move furniture right now? We just got here, Kyle whined. Just do it, Linda commanded. It needs to be angled toward the television. Who looks at the ocean at night anyway? They dragged the chair across the rug. I winced. I had placed that chair specifically to create a reading nook by the window. Within 30 seconds of entering, Linda had dismantled my design to suit her preference for television over nature. She sat in it, bounced once to test the cushion, and nodded. Better. Now it feels like a home. Behind her, the rest of the caravan was pouring in. My Aunt Marcia and Aunt Beatrice were wandering around touching everything. I saw Beatrice run her finger along the mantle of the fireplace, checking for dust. When she found none, she looked almost disappointed. Then Bridget entered. She did not walk in. She performed an entrance. She held her phone up at arm's length, the camera facing her. She had put on a wide, fake smile that showed all her teeth. "Hey guys," she shouted at her phone screen, her voice pitched an octave higher than normal. "We have finally arrived. Welcome to the family beach house." I watched her spin in a circle, capturing the room. "Look at this view," she narrated. "We have been working on this place for so long, and it is finally ready for the season. Just a little weekend getaway for the fam." I felt a cold burn in my chest. Working on this place. She was claiming my sweat equity. She was taking credit for the 18 months of negotiations, renovations, and inspections I had handled alone. To her followers, she was the heiress to a coastal estate. To me, she was a fraud with a filter. Aunt Marcia walked into the frame of Bridget's video. "Oh, it is just gorgeous. Bridget, who did you say holds the deed? Is it your dad's name?" Bridget flinched. She quickly turned the camera away from Marcia, laughing nervously. "Oh, it is all in the family trust. Complicated legal stuff." Linda chimed in from the armchair, loud enough to be heard on the video. "It is the Morales family house. Marcia, that is all that matters. It belongs to us." The lie was cementing itself. They were not just telling strangers. They were telling each other. They were building a collective delusion where this house had materialized out of their sheer deservingness. Then, the tone shifted. The front door opened again, and the guests of honor arrived. Dylan walked in, looking sunburnt and tired, followed by his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Harper. The Harpers were dressed in pressed linen and boat shoes. They looked like they owned a yacht. Not because they wanted to show off, but because they actually did. They stepped into the foyer with a polite, reserved curiosity. Linda shot out of the armchair like she had been spring-loaded. "Eleanor Robert," she cried, rushing over with her arms wide. "Welcome, welcome to our little slice of paradise." "Mrs." Harper smiled politely, looking around the room. "It is lovely, Linda. Very modern. I didn't know you had property in Seabrook." Linda waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, we have kept it quiet. You know how it is. We wanted to get the renovations done before we started hosting. Please, come in. Don't worry about your shoes. Don't worry about your shoes." I gritted my teeth. I had a strict no-shoes policy in that house. I had left a basket of slippers by the door. Linda had ignored it completely. She was inviting them to grind the sand from the driveway into my white oak floors just to appear gracious. Bridget was hovering around the Harpers, looking anxious. She was adjusting throw pillows that didn't need adjusting. She was desperate for their approval. "Let me give you the tour," Bridget chirped. "We have the master suite set up for you guys on the top floor. Best view in the house." I watched them head toward the stairs. They were giving my bedroom the sanctuary I had built for myself to strangers. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, the looting had begun. I switched the camera feed to the kitchen angle. Kyle and my Uncle Jerry were standing in front of the open pantry. "Check this out," Kyle said. He pulled out a bottle of Japanese whiskey I had hidden on the top shelf. It was a Hibiki 21-year-old. It cost nearly $1,000. I was saving it for a promotion. Uncle Jerry whistled. "Your dad has good taste." Kyle laughed. "Dad drinks Bud Light. This must be left over from the previous owner. Or maybe Mom bought it for the party. Either way, finders keepers." He cracked the seal. I watched him pour 3 inches of the amber liquid into a red plastic solo cup. He didn't even use a glass. He took a swig and grimaced. "Tastes like wood. You want some?" Uncle Jerry grabbed the bottle. "Pour me a stiff one." They were drinking my retirement gift to myself out of plastic cups like it was cheap mouthwash. They hadn't been in the house 20 minutes, and they were already consuming the inventory without asking a single question. I checked the time on my dashboard. 4:25. The Tidemark manager and the deputy were scheduled to arrive at 4:45, 20 minutes left. I switched back to the hallway camera. This was the choke point. This was where the trap was set. Bridget was leading the Harpers down the hall on the main floor, showing off the guest rooms. "And here's the bunk room for the kids," she said, gesturing to the left. "And this is the shared bath." Then, she stopped. She was standing in front of the owner's closet. The solid oak door with the smart lock and the fresh red label I had applied yesterday. Authorized personnel only. Private property. Mrs. Harper paused. Oh, what is in there? Bridget stared at the sign. She frowned. She tried the handle. It was locked tight. That is weird, Bridget muttered. She tugged it again. Harder. Mom. Why is this door locked? Linda's voice drifted from the living room. Which door? The big one in the hall. The supply closet. Linda walked into the frame, holding a glass of my white wine. Oh, that must be where they keep the extra linens. And the beach chairs. Mrs. Harper looked concerned. We could use some extra towels. Actually, there were only 2 sets in the room upstairs. Bridget looked at the keypad. She typed in the front door code, 1985007. The lock beeped red. Denied. She tried it again. Denied. This is ridiculous, Bridget snapped. She kicked the bottom of the door. Why would they lock the towels up? Dylan walked up behind them. Maybe it is the owner's personal stuff. Maybe we aren't supposed to go in there. Bridget spun around, her eyes flashing. Dylan, we are the owners. Well, Mom is. It is our house. There shouldn't be any locked doors. The management company must have messed up the codes. She looked at Mrs. Harper, who was waiting patiently. I am so sorry. Eleanor, I promised you those Egyptian cotton towels. I know they are in there. I bought them myself. She was lying. She hadn't bought a single thread in that house, but the lie had momentum now. She couldn't back down. If she couldn't open the door, she would look powerless in her own estate. Mom, call the management company, Bridget demanded. Get the code. Linda pulled out her phone. I am calling them. This is unacceptable. I watched on the screen as Linda dialed. I knew exactly who she was calling the emergency line at Tidemark, but I also knew Sarah had been instructed to let it go to voicemail. Linda listened for a moment, then pulled the phone away. They aren't picking up. Useless people. Bridget was pacing now. We need to get in there. The good beach umbrellas are in there too. We can't go to the beach with just towels. Then she had an idea. An awful, criminal idea. Dylan, she said, call a locksmith. Dylan blinked. What, Bridget? We can't just call the locksmith, she hissed. Look, Mom lost the code. Okay, we own the place. It is not breaking and entering if it is your own house. Just get someone out here to pop the lock. We will pay for it. Dylan looked at his parents. Mr. Harper looked uncomfortable, but he didn't intervene. He probably assumed they really did own the place and had just lost a key. It was a reasonable assumption for normal people. Dylan sighed and pulled out his phone. He searched for a local service. I sat in my car, my heart hammering against my ribs. They were actually going to do it. They were going to physically force their way into a secured area. This was no longer just a civil dispute about rent. This was destruction of property. I could have called the police right then, but I waited. I needed the signature. I needed the fraud to be documented on paper, not just on video. I watched the feed for 15 minutes. They milled around, drinking my whiskey, criticizing my art, and complaining about the locked door. Then, a van pulled into the driveway, Al's 24-hour lock key. A man in a blue jumpsuit got out with a heavy tool bag. I watched him walk into the house. I switched the audio to maximum volume. You folks locked out, the locksmith asked. Just this closet, Linda said, stepping forward. She had put on her imperious voice. The battery died or something. We need it open immediately. The locksmith looked at the heavy-duty smart lock. This is a commercial-grade bolt, ma'am. I can drill it, but it's going to destroy the mechanism. You will need a whole new unit. That is fine, Linda said, waving her hand. Just get it open. We have guests waiting. All right, the man said. I need to see some ID and have you sign the work order authorizing the destruction of the lock. Standard procedure. My breath caught. This was it. Linda hesitated. Just for a second. She knew her ID said Linda Morales, but the house was under an LLC. She didn't know if the locksmith could check the deed. She reached into her purse. She pulled out her driver's license. She handed it to him. I am Linda Morales, she said. My daughter, Skyla Morales, handles the LLC that owns the building, but I am the primary resident. I have authority. The locksmith glanced at the ID, then at the clipboard. He didn't care. He just wanted to get paid. Sign here, here, and here, he said. Linda took the pen. I watched her hand move across the paper. She signed with a flourish. She was signing away her freedom, and she thought she was just signing a receipt. Okay, stand back, the locksmith said. He pulled out a heavy drill. The sound was a high-pitched shriek that cut through the audio feed. Wood splintered, metal ground against metal. Bridget was standing right behind him, bouncing on her toes. Finally, get ready, Eleanor. The good towels are inside. Click. The lock gave way. The locksmith pulled the mechanism out of the door, leaving a jagged hole. He pushed the door open. There you go, ma'am, he said. Bridget rushed forward. She yanked the door wide, ready to reveal the treasure trove of luxury goods she had promised her future in-laws. But there were no Egyptian cotton towels. There were no beach umbrellas. There was no expensive liquor stash. The closet was fitted with floor-to-ceiling metal shelving, and on those shelves, neat and orderly, were rows of black binders, filing boxes, and a small, fireproof safe. The silence in the hallway was absolute. "What is this?" Bridget whispered. She stepped inside. She grabbed a binder from the shelf. It was labeled Seaglass Harbor Holdings, Tax Returns 2024. She grabbed another one. Renovation Contracts, Kitchen. She grabbed a third. Deed and Title, Skyla Morales. She froze. She stared at the spine of the binder. Mrs. Harper leaned in. "Bridget, is everything all right? Where are the towels?" Bridget turned around slowly. Her face was pale, drained of all the color that the sun had given it. She looked at Linda, who was standing in the doorway, her mouth slightly open. "Mom," Bridget whispered, her voice trembling. What Linda snapped. "Where are the towels?" Bridget held up the binder. The gold lettering on the spine caught the light. "It is not a rental," Bridget said, her voice sounding like it was coming from underwater. Linda squinted. "What are you talking about? Of course it is not a rental. It is ours." "No, Mom," Bridget said, and tears started to well up in her eyes. Not tears of sadness, but tears of pure, terrified realization. She opened the binder. The first page was a copy of the deed. "It is Skyla's," Bridget choked out. "This whole house. It is Skyla's." I sat in my car, watching the blood drain from my mother's face. The trap had snapped shut. And then, I saw the blue lights reflecting in my rearview mirror. The deputy had arrived. I reached for my door handle. "It is showtime," I said. The vibration of my phone against the center console was the signal I had been waiting for. I picked it up without looking at the screen. "Ms. Morales," the voice on the other end said. It was Sarah from Tidemark Property Care. Her voice was tight, professional but laced with the adrenaline of a situation gone wrong. "We have received an alert from the smart lock on the owner's closet. The sensor indicates the bolt has been mechanically bypassed. We also have audio confirmation of drilling." "I know." "Sarah," I said, staring at the driveway where the locksmith's van was still parked. "I am watching them do it." "You are watching them?" she asked, her voice spiking in surprise. "I am 30 seconds away," I replied. "I am at the end of the block. I see the patrol car pulling up now. Meet me at the bottom of the driveway. Do not go in without me." I hung up. I did not rush. Panic is for people who are unprepared. I opened the glove box and took out the bottle of water I had packed. I took a sip. Then I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. My hair was pulled back in a severe, tight bun. My makeup was minimal. I was wearing a sharp, tailored navy blazer over a white shirt, clothing that served as a uniform of authority. I did not look like the daughter who fetched coffee. I looked like the plaintiff. I put the car in gear and drove the final 100 yards. I pulled in right behind the locksmith's van, blocking him in. The sheriff's department cruiser was already there, lights flashing silently against the twilight sky. Deputy Miller was standing by his door, adjusting his belt. Sarah, the property manager, was standing next to him, holding a thick file folder. She looked nervous. I stepped out of the car. The heat of the afternoon had not broken, but I felt cold. "Ms. Morales," Deputy Miller asked. He was a large man with a face that had seen enough domestic disputes to know that the quiet ones were usually the most dangerous. "Yes, Deputy," I said, shaking his hand. "Thank you for coming so quickly." "We have a report of a break-in and destruction of property," he asked, glancing at the house. I nodded. "Unauthorized entry, destruction of a secured internal barrier, and impersonation of the property owner." I turned to Sarah. "Do you have the file?" She handed it to me. Her hands were shaking slightly. "I have the deed, the management contract, and the authorized guest list you updated yesterday. Let's go." I said. We walked up the stairs. The sound of our footsteps on the wooden deck was heavy, rhythmic, like the ticking of a clock counting down to 0. The front door was wide open. The locksmith had left it ajar to carry his tools out. I walked into the foyer. The scene inside was a tableau of frozen chaos. Bridget was still standing by the closet, clutching the binder she had pulled from the shelf. My mother, Linda, was standing next to her, her face a mask of shock that was rapidly curdling into anger. Kyle and my father were in the living room, holding their plastic cups of my whiskey. The Harpers Dillon's parents were standing near the stairs, looking like they wanted to teleport back to their country club. The sound of my heels clicking on the hardwood floor was the only noise in the room. Tap, tap, tap. Linda turned. Her eyes widened. For a split second, she looked relieved, as if seeing a familiar face meant the confusing binder in Bridget's hand would disappear. But then she remembered the script. She remembered that I was the exile, Skyla. She barked. Her voice was shrill, cracking with indignation. "What are you doing here?" She stepped forward, regaining her aggressive posture. "We told you explicitly that you were not invited. You cannot just show up here and ruin this trip." "We have guests." She gestured frantically toward the Harpers, as if my presence was a social faux pas comparable to using the wrong fork. I did not stop walking until I was in the center of the room. I did not look at her. I looked at the floor where the locksmith had left a pile of sawdust. I looked at the splintered wood of the closet doorframe. I looked at Bridget, who was clutching the binder to her chest like a shield. "I asked you a question," Linda shouted. "Why are you here?" I turned my head slowly to face her. My expression was blank. "I am here because the security system alerted me that someone was drilling into my walls," I said. My voice was low, devoid of emotion. "I came to inspect the damage to my house." The room went silent, the kind of silence that sucks the air out of your lungs. Linda blinked. "Your house." Bridget let out a small, strangled noise. She looked from the binder to me, and then back to the binder. "Don't be ridiculous," Linda scoffed, though her voice wavered. "This is a rental. We booked it months ago. Just because you are jealous doesn't mean you can come here and make up stories." Deputy Miller stepped forward. The jingle of his equipment belt was loud in the quiet room. "Ma'am," he said, addressing Linda. He did not smile. He did not look friendly. "I need to establish who is the legal owner of this property." Linda straightened her spine. She looked at the Harpers, desperate to maintain the charade of the matriarch. She looked at the locksmith, who was standing by the door waiting to be paid. She looked at the deputy. "I am," Linda said. It was 2 words, 2 small words, but they were the heaviest words she had ever spoken. She lifted her chin. "I am the owner. Well, my family is. We are the ones staying here. We are the ones who authorize the work on the lock. This is a family dispute, officer. My daughter is she is having an episode." She pointed a finger at me. "She is not well. She has been stalking us." I watched her dig the grave. I let her finish the sentence. I let the lie hang in the air for 3 full seconds, so that everyone, especially Mrs. Harper, could taste the flavor of it. Deputy Miller looked at me. He raised an eyebrow. I held out my hand to Sarah. She placed the document in my palm. I handed the folder to the deputy. "Deputy," I said, "this is the deed to the property. Recorded with the county clerk 2 years ago. The owner of record is Seaglass Harbor Holdings, LLC. I pointed to the second page. "And this is the article of organization for that LLC. As you can see, The sole member and manager is Skyla Morales. The deputy opened the folder. He took his time reading. He adjusted his glasses. He looked at the paper, then at Linda, then at the paper again. He looked up. "Ma'am?" he said to Linda. His tone had changed. It was no longer inquisitive. It was authoritative. "You just stated you were the owner. But these documents state that this property belongs to Ms. Skyla Morales. Do you have any documentation to prove your claim?" Linda's mouth opened and closed like a fish on a dock. She looked at Bridget. "Bridget, show him the booking," Linda stammered. "Show him the email." Bridget didn't move. She was still holding the binder she had taken from the closet. The binder that proved I had paid the taxes. The binder that proved I owned the very floor she was standing on. "It is her house, Mom," Bridget whispered. What Linda snapped. Bridget held up the binder. Her hands were shaking so hard the pages rattled. "Look at it. It is all her name. The deed. The insurance. It is all Skyla." Linda snatched the binder from Bridget's hands. She tore it open. She stared at the pages. "No," she muttered. "No, this isn't right. We rented this. Dylan rented this." She spun around to face Dylan. "Dylan. Tell them you paid the deposit." Dylan looked terrified. He stepped back, bumping into his mother. I booked it online. Through a site. I didn't know who the owner was. It just said Seaglass Harbor." Linda looked at me. Her eyes were wild. She was trying to process the shift in reality. The daughter she had dismissed, the daughter she had banned, was the landlord she had been impersonating. So what? Linda hissed. "So you bought a house. Big deal. That doesn't give you the right to bring the police here. We are your family. We are guests. You are not guests." I said. I walked over to the closet. I ran my finger over the jagged hole where the lock used to be. "Guests are invited." I said, "Guests respect the rules. Guests do not bring a drill to a locked door and destroy it because they want a towel." I turned to face them. "You were explicitly told not to enter this room. There was a sign. You ignored it. You hired a stranger to break into a secure area of my home." Bridget stepped forward, putting on her best smile, the one she used when she needed a refund at a store. "Okay, Sky, look," she said, laughing nervously. She glanced at Mrs. Harper. "This is all just a big misunderstanding. We were just looking for linens. We didn't know it was your special room. Can we just talk about this privately? It is a family thing." She turned to the Harpers. "Why don't you guys go out to the deck? Get some fresh air. Skyla is just being dramatic. You know how she is." Mrs. Harper did not move. Her face was like granite. "I don't think she is being dramatic." "Bridget," Mrs. Harper said. Her voice was ice cold. "I think she is the owner of this house, and I think we are currently trespassing." The word hung in the air. Trespassing. Bridget flinched. No. Eleanor, we paid. Dylan paid. You paid a rental fee." I corrected her. "That grants you a license to occupy the premises under specific conditions. One of those conditions is that you do not damage the property. Another condition is that you do not access restricted areas." I looked at the deputy. "Officer," I said, "I would like to file a formal complaint for criminal mischief regarding the destruction of the lock, and I would like these individuals removed from the premises immediately." Linda gasped. "Removed? You are kicking us out." "You kicked me out of the family." "Mom," I said calmly, "I am just kicking you out of my house. My father, Mark." Finally stood up. He walked over to where I was standing. He looked older than I remembered. He looked tired. "Skyla," he said softly, "please, don't do this. Not in front of everyone." I looked at him. I felt a twinge of pain, but I crushed it. He had sat in that chair and drank my whiskey while my mother lied to the police. He was an accomplice. "I am not doing this." "Dad," I said, "you did this. You drove here. You walked in. You watched them break the lock. But we didn't know," he pleaded. "Ignorance is not a defense," I said. "And frankly, Dad, you should have known. You should have known better than to think you could treat people like garbage and then sleep in their beds. I am stopping it." I said, "I am stopping the cycle." "Right now," Linda screamed. "You ungrateful brat. After everything we have done for you, you are ruining Bridget's engagement. She lunged toward me. Deputy Miller stepped in between us. His hand went to her shoulder, stopping her forward momentum. "Ma'am, step back," he ordered. Linda struggled against his grip. "This is my house." I said, "It is my house." "No, ma'am," the deputy said firmly. "It is not, and right now, you are very close to being arrested for disorderly conduct." Suddenly, the front door opened again. The heavy thud of leather shoes on wood drew everyone's attention. A man walked in. He was tall, wearing a charcoal gray suit that cost more than the locksmith's van. He carried a leather briefcase. He had the air of a man who charged by the minute and enjoyed every second of it. It was Ethan Rowe, my lawyer. He stopped next to the deputy. He looked around the room, taking in the scene with a predatory smile. "Good afternoon, Deputy," Ethan said. He nodded to me. "Ms. Morales." He walked over to the dining table and set his briefcase down. The snap of the latches opening echoed in the room. "Who is this?" Linda demanded. "Who are you?" Ethan pulled out a stack of documents. He did not look at her. He arranged the papers on the table with precise, geometric alignment. "My name is Ethan Rowe," he said. "I am the attorney representing Seaglass Harbor Holdings and Ms. Skyla Morales." He turned to face the group. "I was listening to the exchange from the doorway," Ethan said, "and while the criminal mischief charge regarding the lock is certainly valid, I am afraid the situation is significantly more serious than a broken door." He picked up a piece of paper. It was a credit report. "We are not just looking at trespassing today," he said pleasantly. He looked directly at Linda. "We are looking at identity theft, wire fraud, and credit card fraud involving a federally insured financial institution." He held up the paper. "This vacation was paid for with a card opened in my client's name, without her consent, mailed to an address she has not lived at for 15 years. The room did not just go silent, it went dead." Linda's face turned a color I had never seen before, a gray, sickly ash. Ethan smiled. "So, before anyone else says another word, I would strongly suggest you consider your right to remain silent, because the rental period is over. The litigation period has just begun." The silence in the room was not empty. It was heavy, suffocating, and thick with the impending collapse of a lifetime of lies. My lawyer, Ethan Rowe, stood by the dining table like an executioner who had just sharpened his axe. He did not shout. He did not need to. He simply laid the papers out, one by one, forming a perfect grid on the polished mahogany surface. "Item 1, Ethan said, his voice smooth and professional. He tapped a piece of paper with his index finger. "The work order from Al's 24-hour lock and key, signed 20 minutes ago by a Linda Morales." He looked at my mother. "Under Georgia law, signing a document authorizing the destruction of property you do not own, while misrepresenting yourself as the owner, is fraud. It is also criminal mischief in the second degree." He laid down the next paper, Item 2, the timestamp from the security camera in the hallway. It clearly shows the defendants attempting to guess the code, failing, and then making the decision to call a locksmith. This negates any defense of accidental entry or misunderstanding. This was a calculated breach of a secured perimeter. Linda was trembling now. Her hands were gripping the back of the armchair she had so confidently rearranged just half an hour ago. She looked at the deputy, then at me. "Skyla," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "Stop him. This is your lawyer. Tell him to stop. We are your parents." I did not answer her. I walked over to the table and stood next to Ethan. I picked up the third document, the one that hurt the most. The one that turned this from a property dispute into a tragedy. It was the credit report. I looked at the transaction history. I looked at the line item for the airline tickets. I looked at the line item for the rental deposit on this very house. I looked up at my mother. "Who opened the account?" "Mom," I asked. My voice was quiet, but it carried across the room. Linda looked away. "I don't know what you are talking about." I read from the paper. "Account opened 6 weeks ago. Applicant name, Skyla Morales. Social security number ending in 4589. Mailing address, 1244 Oakwood Drive. I took a step closer to her. That is your address. Mom, I haven't lived there in 15 years. You used my old Social Security card, the one you kept in your safe box for safekeeping, to open a line of credit. You stole my identity to pay for the vacation you banned me from. Tears began to stream down Linda's face, ruining her makeup, making her look not like the grand matriarch, but like a desperate, caught thief. I was going to pay it back, she sobbed. It was just a bridge loan. We were short on cash this month, and I knew you had good credit. I was going to pay it off before you even noticed. I needed to make this reunion special. I did it for the family. I felt a coldness settle in my chest. Absolute and final. You borrowed it, I repeated. I held up the paper. Borrowing without asking is stealing. Mom, borrowing in someone else's name is federal fraud. You didn't do this for the family. You did this for your ego. You wanted to play the rich woman, and you decided I was the bank that wouldn't notice a few thousand missing dollars. Bridget stepped forward then. She looked frantic. She saw her world crumbling, her fiancé, her future in-laws, her image all dissolving in the acid of the truth. Skyla, please, Bridget begged, reaching out to touch my arm. I pulled away sharply. Don't be like this, Bridget cried. Mom made a mistake. Okay, she made a mistake, but we are blood. You can't let your lawyer ruin us. Just tell the police it was a misunderstanding. We will leave. We will pay you back. Just don't let them arrest Mom. She turned to Dylan's parents, forcing a wobbly smile. It is just a family spat. Eleanor, you know how sisters are. Skyla is she is very particular about her finances. Mrs. Harper, Eleanor, did not smile back. She was standing very still, her posture rigid. She looked at Bridget with an expression I recognized. It was the look one gives to a piece of food found on a clean floor, distaste and confusion. Bridget, Mrs. Harper said. Her voice was like breaking glass. You told us this was the family estate, she said. You told us your parents were successful real estate investors. You brought us here, to this home, to celebrate your engagement. She gestured around the room. And now I am finding out that not only do you not own this home, but you are effectively squatters who broke in, and that your mother funded this trip by stealing from your sister. Bridget's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked at Dylan. Dylan, baby, tell them, she whispered. Tell them it is okay. Dylan looked at her. He looked at the hole in the closet door. He looked at the police officer. He looked at me. For the first time since I had known him, the fog of infatuation seemed to lift from his eyes. He saw the manipulation. He saw the entitlement. He saw the future that awaited him if he married into this chaos, a future of bail money, lies, and covering up for a mother-in-law who thought the laws didn't apply to her. I didn't know, Dylan said, his voice flat. Bridget shrieked. I didn't know, he repeated, louder this time. He stepped away from her. I thought your family owned this place. I thought you were telling the truth. He looked at his parents. Mom, Dad, go to the car. But Bridget reached for him. Don't, Dylan said. He didn't yell. He just held up a hand. We are done. Bridget, this is insane. I can't do this. He turned and walked out the front door without looking back. Mr. and Mrs. Harper followed him, their shoes clicking briskly on the floor, stepping over the locksmith's tools as they fled the scene of the crime. Bridget stood alone in the center of the foyer. The sound of the Harper's car engine starting outside was the death knell of her social aspirations. She collapsed onto the bottom step of the stairs, burying her face in her hands, sobbing with the raw, ugly sound of a child who has broken her favorite toy. The room was quiet again, save for Bridget's weeping and Linda's jagged breathing. Deputy Miller cleared his throat. He looked at me. Ms. Morales, he said, we have established ownership. We have evidence of trespass and criminal mischief. How do you want to proceed? Do you want to press criminal charges for the break-in and the fraud? I looked at my family. My father was sitting on the sofa, his head in his hands, defeated. My brother Kyle was leaning against the wall, looking at his phone, probably trying to delete his text to me asking for passwords. My mother was shaking, looking at the floor, waiting for the handcuffs. I could send her to jail. I had the power. Ethan had the paperwork. One word from me, and Linda would spend the night in a cell. It would be justice. It would be fair. But jail was too easy. Jail would make her a martyr. She would tell everyone I was the vindictive daughter who put her own mother behind bars. She would play the victim for the rest of her life. No, I said. I looked at the deputy. I do not want to press charges today. Deputy, Linda let out a massive, ragged sigh of relief. Thank God, she whispered. Thank God. Skyla, I knew you loved. I am not finished. I cut her off. I turned to Ethan. I want a formal notice of trespass issued against Linda, Mark, Bridget, and Kyle Morales. I want it filed with the county. If they ever step foot on this property again, I want them arrested immediately. Ethan nodded, scribbling on his notepad. Done. And, I continued, looking at the deputy, I want them removed from the premises. Right now, not in an hour, not tomorrow, now. I want a police escort off the property. Linda stood up, her face flushing red again. You can't do that. It is 5 o'clock. We have nowhere to go. We have coolers full of food. We have luggage. That sounds like a tenant problem, not a landlord problem. I said, You are heartless, Linda screamed. She lunged forward, but kept her distance when the deputy shifted his stance. You are ruining this family. You are destroying everything. We just wanted to be together. I laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. Together I asked, You banned me. Mom, you literally sent a text message telling everyone to hide the address from me. You didn't want to be together. You wanted to be here, in my house, without me. I walked to the front door and held it wide open. The heat from outside blasted in, clashing with the air conditioning. You say I am destroying the family. I said, my voice steady and hard as steel. But I am not. I am simply refusing to let the family destroy me. I pointed to the driveway. Get out. My father stood up. He walked past me without a word. He didn't look at me. He just walked out to the car. Kyle followed, carrying his bag, looking annoyed rather than ashamed. Bridget stood up, wiping her mascara-smeared eyes. She looked at me with pure hatred. I hope you are happy, she hissed as she passed me. You have a big house and no one to share it with. You are going to die alone. I smiled at her. Better to be alone in a castle than a servant in your circus. Bridget. She stormed out. Linda was the last to leave. She grabbed her tote bag. She stopped in the doorway. She looked at the house, the high ceilings, the ocean view, the life she wanted so desperately but was too toxic to earn. She looked at me. You are not my daughter. She spat. I nodded. I think we can both agree on that. I am just your landlord, and your lease has been terminated. She turned and marched down the stairs. I watched them from the doorway. Deputy Miller and Ethan stood behind me. We watched as they loaded their coolers back into the SUVs. We watched as they argued in the driveway about where to go. We watched as they realized that Dylan and the Harpers were already gone, leaving them with one less car and zero dignity. Finally, the engine started. They backed out of the driveway, gravel crunching under their tires. They drove away, a procession of defeat, heading toward the highway and whatever cheap motel would take them in. I watched until the last taillight disappeared around the bend. Deputy Miller tipped his hat. I will file the report. Ms. Morales, if they come back, call 911. Thank you. Deputy, I said. Ethan packed up his briefcase. I will have the civil suit for the credit fraud ready by Monday. We will garnish their wages if we have to. They will pay back every cent. Thank you. Ethan, I said. They left. I was alone. I turned back into the house. The air was still cool. The light was turning golden as the sun began to set over the marsh. I walked to the living room. I saw the chair my mother had moved. I dragged it back to its original position, facing the window, facing the sea. I walked to the kitchen. I saw the plastic cup of whiskey Kyle had left on the counter. I picked it up and poured it down the sink. I rinsed the cup and threw it in the trash. I walked to the closet. The door was broken, hanging on its hinges. I would have to get that fixed. But the files inside were safe. The deed was safe. My truth was safe. I walked to the front door. I looked out at the ocean one last time. The waves were crashing rhythmically, indifferent to the drama, indifferent to the humans who thought they could control the tide. I stepped back inside. I closed the heavy oak door. I turned the deadbolt. Click. The sound echoed through the house. It was a solid, final sound. It was the sound of a border being enforced. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door. For 34 years, I had been a guest in other people's lives. I had been a tenant in my own family. I had been an intruder in their narrative. But as I stood there, listening to the silence, my silence, I realized something. For the first time in my life, I am the owner. Thank you so much for listening to Skyla's story of boundaries and justice. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. Are you listening while driving, cooking, or relaxing at home? Please let me know in the comments below to share your thoughts. And do not forget to subscribe to the Maya Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.